Hello everyone, Carlos here for another episode of What's Up in Archaeology. Today I'm going to do 3 articles, basically news, what's been happening on recently. How's my sound? I got a new microphone and I'm trying out this new system. Let's see how my articles. Oh good, I can hear me on myself quite well on my laptop. So hello Archaeonomy, hello First Lehads, morning mate. Carlos David, my dear friend, and Warped Reflection, how are you both? So let's get on with the episode. This is a standalone mic and I'm using my earplugs basically to hear, but I don't really need them because as I only have sound, so I just put them on maybe to shuffle, but no, I'm not going to use them. It clears up my head. So let's share the screen and go on with the first article, which is on the Canaanites. I won't go into the biblical thing of the Canaanites. Everyone knows them. Deuteronomy covers it quite well on their destruction, but I'm focusing more on the science. And the science is they've mapped the genetic record, the genetic map of 5 Canaanite individuals that were excavated in Sidon in Lebanon. Sidon was one of the cities of the Canaanites, as was Hebron, Nebulus. I think Tyre was also a Canaanite city, but I hope someone will correct me or not. But anyway, the article comes from Science. There's a New York Times article as well, but was too political. I'm going for this one, the Science one, because it's more scientific and less political. As always, I also have the actual scientific paper that was published on this, and it's in the description. Please use them, because I place them there for your benefit. I don't do this out of goodwill. Well, of course I do this out of goodwill. I do this because I love you guys, but I do this because I think reading the actual scientific public papers, and then going later on and reading what the media put out, not scientific journals like scientific print like Science, but the mainstream media, you will see how accurate they are. But without further ado, let's start reading. Wrong one. I'm going to augment this, make it bigger. Here we go. So ancient DNA reveals the fate of the mysterious Canaanites. Yeah, they were mysterious, but they were well documented in the Bible, at least that. They didn't leave any written records. They did build cities, and they lived in what is now the Levant. It covers Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, and Syria. That's where they lived from the Bronze Age, about 4,000 years ago. So the article goes on. The pharaohs ruled Egypt, and the ancient Greeks built their first cities. The mysterious people called the Canaanites dominated the Near East. Yes, they did. Around 4,000 years ago. 4,000 years ago would have been, take 2000 BC, Bronze Age. What they're doing just before the Iron Age. They built cities around the Levant. I already said it was Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, and part of Syria. Yet the Canaanites left no surviving written records, leaving researchers to piece together their history from secondary sources. Yes, they were not a illiterate in terms of writing society, culture, peoples, or whatever. Today I'm having a local beer. It's called Praxis. It's from the university town of Coimbra in Portugal. and it's a waste beer. It's not bad, not bad. So just so you guys know. So one of the sources in the Bible's Old Testament suggests that they had a Canaanites, the Israelites exodus from after the exodus from Egypt. God ordered them, destroying Canaan and its people. And other passages suggest that the Canaanites but other passages suggest that they may have survived. But did this really happen? Well, we know how accurate the Bible is, knowing that supposedly the Israelites were slaves to their pharaohs, except that there is no archaeological evidence suggesting even written records, and none of the pharaohs, which we have extensive written records of their daily lives, basically said they had whole people as slaves. Of course, the Egyptians. Well, there's a bit of a debate. I don't know, so I won't go into that. That's just a little bit of external extra stuff. Price, mate. Just noticed you there. Yeah. Yes, El Shaddai and Elyon also. What? Oh, I thought you were. Never mind. I'm delirious. Anyway, let's get back to the article. This is all biblical sourced. The Canaanites and their fights, but now archaeological data suggests that the Canaanite cities were never destroyed or abandoned. So that's triggering to many religious peoples. But I won't go there. This is pure science, so I will not go into the politics of stuff. Now, ancient DNA recovered from 5 Canaanite skeletons suggests that these people survived to contribute their genes to millions of people living today. Now, a new sample from Sidon, that's Lebanon. It's in the southern. I don't know the map. I can't visualize the map. I know Lebanon enough, but it's south of Beirut, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. Anyway, but I will be corrected in my comment section later on. So please do correct me. I encourage you to correct me. I work from memory most of the time. If I'm not reading the article, I work from memory. So that's how I want you guys to correct me. But enough of my ranting. So they extracted the samples from 5 the Canaanite skeletons and from Sidon. The Mark Haber, a geneticist from the Wellcome Trust Sanger Institute of Hixton, the UK, extracted enough DNA from ancient skeletons to sequence the whole genome of 5 Canaanite individuals from around 3,700 years ago. So we're around 4,000 years ago, just the peak of the Bronze Age, basically. Haber's first mission was to figure out who the Canaanites were, genetically speaking. So, of course, he got the samples, and he went to reference it because an archaeologist's work, and not just an archaeologist's work, a geneticist's work, working in conjunction with archaeologists, they go to the library to find out all that has been written on the subject. Now, the ancient Greeks sources suggest that they migrated to the Levant from the east. So we have a record of a live record that said that the Canaanites came from the east. To test that, Haber, whatever, and his colleagues compared the Canaanite genomes to those of other ancient populations in Eurasia. It turned out that the Greeks were half right. About 50% of the Canaanites' genes come from local farmers who settled the Levant about 10,000 years ago. I already did a live stream on these early farmers, the Göbekli Tepe stream I had, and a few others that around 10,000 years ago, there was the transition from from food hunter-gathering to food production. So these early farmers settled in the Levant about that time. This is inside the Fertile Crescent, by the way. The other half was linked to early identified from skeletons found in Iran. Now, this highlighted text is a link to the study, which I have also linked in the description. God, please don't. No, it didn't went good. This link here. It did. Oh, God. Damn it. I hate this shit. I have it here. So you guys can see it's this one. I have it here up. So this is the one which we're supposed to. I'm reading. So I apologize. Technical issues. My mouse is too sensitive. Anyway, the team reports today from the American Journal of Human Genetics, which is the link that I just showed you guys. The researchers estimated that the eastern migrants arrived in the Levant. Remember, the Levant is what present-day Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. That is the Levant, right? And they started mixing with the locals about 5,000 years ago. So that's where they more or less, there was a steady stream of people. This was the 5,000 years ago was the actual, they were already city-states established. For example, Babylon, Syria, etc. Those early city-states in the Mesopotamian region, also from Iran, etc. Because the whole area was quite fertile, and especially the crescent, the Fertile Crescent, goes from the Taurus Mountains, the Euphrates, the Levant, etc. And of course, agriculture spread, and then these migrants looking for new land came in or whatever, and they began mixing with the locals around 5,000 years ago. So this is the archaeological site of Sidon in 1998. That's where the Canaanite city. The picture, I love showing pictures. You can see the walls. That's where the current trench that they're working on. Whenever it's covered, it's where the archaeologists are working. So because we don't like to work in the sun, especially in areas where it's very hot. But I digress. This finding fits with other recent studies of the Levant. Yosif Lazaridis, the geneticist from Harvard Medical School in Boston, saw the same mixture of Eastern and local ancestry in the genomes of the ancient skeletons of Jordan. So this is comparative. They found that the same mixing from in Jordan and in Lebanon. So it just goes to show that that area of people were common, homogeneous in that whole region. It wasn't just sporadic or in one area. It's nice to see that we observed wasn't a fluke of one particular site, but was part of a broader Canaanite population. So the Canaanite populations had that genetic makeup. Now, what Haber has confirmed who the Canaanites were, he also set out to find what happened to them. He compared their genomes to about 99 living in Lebanese people and hundreds of other genetic databases. So we already have the Genome Project of the 90s, early 90s, and continued on into, I think, the 20s, the 10s, or the early zeros. That's where I sent in my genetic, made the genetic test, the Genome Project from National Geographic, and it came back that showed that my lineage was mostly Celtic, some next Roman, then Germanic, and another 3.5% Neanderthal. So I'm proud of that. All of my 3-4 heritages, or my mixing, it's just typical of where I live, mostly. So now, Haber found that the present-day Lebanese population is largely descended from the ancient Canaanites. They inherited more than 90% of their genes from this ancient source. The other 10% have come from migrants from Central Europe who moved to the Levant around 3,000 years ago. Depending on the markers, if I'm not mistaken, I'd love to have an actual geneticist again to compare the markers. You can pinpoint certain markers to certain populations, and if you concentrate on those type of markers, you'll say that 90% or whatever percentage of a population is from that. They've done that with Genghis Khan. That X percentage of the Western or Eurasian population has his marker. Yes. So what? His marker, his specific marking genes is a small percentage of the whole total genetic makeup of an individual or even of a population. But we can take that as quite fine, because I have the actual study done by geneticists, and they have shown that yes, those genes are 90% Canaanite. But there's a but. We'll see in a little bit. The new study shows that there was no war between the Israelites and the Canaanites. Well, not necessarily, as you said. The Wellcome Trust Sanger Institute geneticist Chris Tyler Smith, who worked for the Haber. The genes don't always track conflict, obviously, because if they did track conflict, they would abruptly end. That's why, if they continue, it means that the people, the descendants were continually having descendants. They're having children. So yes, that's possibly one thing of the genetic conflicts that you don't see that well. You do see it in. No, you don't even see it in Neanderthals, because many Europeans still carry their genes and they're still passing them on to the offspring. They will become watered down, but depends on the actual gene region if it does become less frequent or not. But that is for a geneticist, not for me. He can have, it says basically here that don't track, you can have genetically similar or indistinguishable populations that are culturally very different. Now, this is a very important statement here, that are culturally very different but genetically similar or indistinguishable, and that they don't get along with one another. This might have been the case with the Israelites and the Canaanites. They were basically genetically indistinguishable, yet they had totally different cultures. You can see it now today. And where do you see it? Well, you can see it in the Syrian Christians and the Syrian Muslims and the Syrian Jews. They are the survivors of the Syrian Christians and Jews anyway. You can see that they are genetically almost indistinguishable. Yes, even the Jews, they would have had enough, because the Jews would have been a bit slightly different genetic makeup, but I don't know. But let's continue with the Christian. Let's concentrate more on the Christian. I think that would be more accurate. The Christian Syrians from Syria that have been persecuted and almost wiped out by ISIS are indistinguishable from the Muslim populations, yet they are different culturally. That is an example. So I'll have a drink, as this sort of confused even me, amazingly. So the case of the Israelites and the Canaanites, they were similar genes but sworn enemies, according to the Bible anyway. If those populations conquered each other, they probably wouldn't leave any traces. They were easily picked up with that we could easily pick up. Ancient DNA agrees. Johannes Krauss, the geneticist from the Max Planck Institute of the Science of Human History in Vienna. Now that's the whole. I've already talked about this guy, Johannes Krauss, on for example, my stream with Sargon on the Egyptian pharaoh mummies DNA, and from other live streams I have done on the Max Planck Institute. So that's, if you guys want to know, that's the whole title. This one wasn't involved in the current work, but he has, perhaps there was a biblical war that ancient DNA could not see. Of course not. DNA, the war. If there's no archaeological evidence in the ground, like cities were not destroyed, the genetics show that they were similar, and they still continue. So yeah. Now update under slide 28. The story in its headline had been updated to reflect that the Bible, God ordered the destruction of Canaanites, but some cities and people may have survived. Yeah, well, that's just a crappy type thing to end it. Tell you what, this article was much better than the one that I did before, that I was going to include the New York Times one, but oh god, that was too much politics. So remember, this is the actual study. This is the study. It's a reference. It's the full article. It's free. I always try and present a free source of the study if I can, and in the next one I can't, so I'll have to show you the one that's still behind the paywall. So we end up here and we go back into Australia. Now, I grew up in Australia. I studied archaeology at La Trobe University in Australia. I had to do Australian archaeology, and I visited or studied. I had to do actually Australian archaeology, which talked about the actual my son's behind me also doing a conference with one of his mates. Sorry about that, if you can hear that. If not, never mind. It sort of takes me off a bit of my my train of thought. But anyway, I grew up in Australia. I studied archaeology, and one of the sites that were in the ancient occupation of Australia by the first human settlers, Homo sapiens sapiens, of course, was Lake Mungo, the Mungo site, and it was tentatively dated at 44,000 years, more or less. It ranges between 50 to 40,000 years, and that is located in New South Wales. If anyone knows how big Australia is, it's fucking huge. It's as big as Europe. Now, to get from, they came from Indonesia, obviously Papua New Guinea, through Papua New Guinea and Indonesia. So there's the Wallace Line, which divides Southeast Asia. Well, basically, it's botanical and not just botanical, also faunal divide between Asia and Australasia, Australia, New Guinea, etc., and also possibly including Papua New Zealand, and it's basically west of that line, the Wallace Line, or in Indonesia, you have primates and other animals that tigers, rhinoceroses, elephants, etc. Now, south of that, or east of that, in this Australasia, we'll call it Australasia, the Australian Papua New Guinea, or Australian New Guinea subcontinent, continent, whatever you want to call it, you have marsupials. That is the divide. Now, so 40-ish to 50,000 years ago, there were people already living in Lake Mungo. Now, I always suspected that they would have had to been much earlier in the most northern part of this continent, the continent of Australasia, in New Guinea. And I've even made a sort of a side how Homo sapiens colonized Europe in around 45,000-ish, 50,000 years ago. But I've also made a live stream showing that they were earlier. There were possibly two migration events. Now, so let's assume or let's hypothesize, much better, that Homo sapiens left Africa and settled in the Eurasian continent around 60,000, 70,000 years ago. Because you can find Homo sapien sites or evidence from around that period. Now, I made a calculation, just playing around, from more or less where supposedly Homo sapiens evolved East Africa. This was before I even knew, like everyone knew, the 350,000 year old, up to 350,000 year olds, Homo sapiens remains from Morocco. So let's keep sort of ignore that for now, or not. If you want to move, say, from East, I made a calculation from East Africa all the way to, the closest to Papua New Guinea, in Australia, actual Australia. That's about 15,000 kilometers. If you dislocate your camp 2 kilometers per year, can you imagine that? 2 kilometers, you set up your camp here, and over 2 years you move it 2 kilometers in a direction. If that direction happens to be in the direction going to Australia, it would only take you 7,500 years to reach there. That's only I knew the actual generational. It's not a lot of generations. I think it's only 2,000 generations, or even less. It's a generation calculated in archaeological times, 25 years. So divide 7,100 years by, and you get the actual number of generations that would have theoretically take. This is all theoretics. It's not. No, this is all theoretical. It's not even. It's hypothetical. I'm sorry. I almost confuse myself there. This is hypothetical, not theoretical. Hypothetical. Hypothesis is what? Hello, Gunny. How are you, mate? So anyway, according to the report on the Sydney Morning Herald, humans first arrived in Australia at least 65,000 years ago. That's about 10,000 years earlier than previously thought. Making this bigger. Yes, but I always say that. God damn it! I had recorded my in some form my suspicions, but it's too late now. I won't claim it. I just explain myself now than previously thought. An international team of scientists, including Ben Marwick of the University of Washington and Chris Clarkson of the University of Queensland, excavated this is an Australian and Aboriginal Mabjibidi, that's it. An ancient campsite located beneath a sandstone rock shelter in Kakadu National Park in the Northern Territory. That's the closest you get to New Guinea, Papua New Guinea, and then Papua New Guinea has Timor and Java and Bali and all those islands. Not far, almost same distance. Wildfires in northern Australia can be seen in special days, quite clear days, from Timor, so it's not that far. Northern Territory, they found perfectly preserved stone axes with polished and sharpened edges up against the back wall of the shelter. There was one on the surface, another further down that we dated to 10,000 years, Clarkson said. Then there were quite a few further down still, which we were able to date to 35,000 and 40,000 years. Now, 40,000 years ago is more or less contemporaneous with Lake Mungo. There's also, between that 25,000 years ago, Kilo, No, Sunbury, sorry, Sunbury, which was not far from where I lived when I lived in Melbourne. They also found skeletal remains which were dated to around 25-ish thousand years. But you can also, I will try and link after. I should put these dates in the description. I will do that after this. And then I found one which was at 65,000 years, which was surrounded by a whole bunch of stone flakes. Sorry, I was thinking about SJWs. I need a drink. 1 second, guys. Yeah, a bunch of stone flakes. The layers were dated using single grain optical stimulated luminescence, which is just another word for what's called thermoluminescence, which with the heat, certain you can use that on ceramics, you can use that on quartz, you can use that on flint. Well, after it's been cracked, open or cracked to make the tool, etc., it exposes a part that has. See, from what I know of thermal luminescence, you have to heat up the sample, and it emits certain radiation in the form of light, which can then be dated. I don't know the physics or the chemistry, but it is quite accurate. So it's one of the dating techniques we can use, which do not involve carbon dating or carbon materials, and it is, again, I stress, quite accurate. The stream also recovered seed grinding tools, a midden of seashells. A midden is basically a rubbish dump. You eat shells, you gather shells, you eat them, and you just dump it in the same area over time, and it grows up. That's what a midden is. Archaeology knows what a midden is. There's a lot of middens in Australia. There's none that I know of here in Portugal. Again, I stress that I know of. But that's basically what a midden is. And animal bones. The animal bones could be dated. And there's a large amount of ground ochre. Again, I've talked about ochre. Ochre, that iron oxide clay mineral type thing, which is, you can date those. So the new dates suggest that humans and the megafauna, such as the protodon, the big marsupial, huge wombat diprotodon, if I'm not mistaken, they shared the environment for some 20,000 years. Now, this is interesting because up until now, as this says, it was also thought that the arrival of humans in Australia triggered the extinction of the continent's megafauna. Click the link. It's not bad. About the video of Australian rock art, it's okay. But the megafauna. If now we prove that we've proven that humans and the megafauna lived for 20,000 years ago, now we have to shift our hypothesis that they caused the mass extinctions in Australia. Because if they lived 20,000 years ago, 20,000 years with each other, they were, of course, hunting them, but they probably did not cause their extinction. So, and again, hello everyone. Hello Maleficus, Soul 2XL. Mate, if you just arrived, you just missed the Canaanites, that they are still are living among us. The Bible is wrong, but I won't go into that. Again, in my description, you will see the study. It's in Nature, but unfortunately, it's behind a paywall. But at least I am citing it as a source. I apologize. I've tried to find one that didn't have it wasn't behind a paywall. And hello, Leaky Monkey, mate. So yes, I'll update if I ever get notifications that another publishing site has published this study. that is not behind a paywall, I will add it to the description. So okay, now just before I go on to the next article, I'm gonna have a beer and say hello to the people. I've been on for half an hour and I still got, I don't know, whenever I finish. This wheat beer is not bad. It's Portuguese, from as I was saying. It has a museum of beer, and it's not bad. It's not bad. Better than some others I've drinking. So let's see the chat. All my awesome people, which I really like to have on, that I'm privileged that you guys watch my little humble channel, and thank you for being on, guys. Thank you for watching me. So before further ado, let's start the next and the last article. This one is again to do with some form of genetics, and as the title says, in saliva there's clues to a ghost species of ancient humans. Before I go that, the study which I have here linked from Oxford Academica, Molecular Biology and Evolution, it appears to be like those paywall behind paywall articles, but it isn't, and I'll tell you why. I have here a link to the PDF. You can download the link yourselves, the study yourselves completely. As you can see, I'm downloading it now, and it's complete for your watching pleasure or reading pleasure. I mean, and it's all here. It explains everything which I'm going to read in the article, because this is too technical even for me as an archaeologist. It's very, very technical. But you can do that at your pleasure, at the convenience, etc. And I don't know the technicalities of genetics. I don't claim to, and I will never claim to. I rely on the geneticist, or archaeologists rely on the geneticist, to interpret it and tell us this is what is happening. And so we come back to the article itself from Psy.org, which is I use these a lot. Let's close that. I use this site a lot. It's very good. There's no perfect site for publishing archaeological, or not just archaeological, for any scientific publishing else there is, or publishing magazines, print, whatever you want to call it. There's nothing perfect, but some are better than others, and I rely on ones that are just basically pure science. I don't think they very rarely put in any politics into it. And we go in here. You see a hominin. Let's see. Let's identify him. He has no chin. Okay, he has a suborbital torus, means he has a brow ridge. No forehead, sloping forehead, and he would be he's not a Neanderthal, because the back part of his skull is round like Homo sapiens sapiens, and Neanderthals would have had a more elongated, pronounced back part of the skull, and also even that we have that sort of pronounced bit of the part of the back part of our skull protrudes just a slightly. So this guy is just a generic makeup of hominins in general. Has the round back part is Homo sapiens. The front is anything from Neanderthals backwards. Same with the chin. The nose is not Neanderthal. The nose, I don't know. So yeah, and he has no Adam's apple, so it's a female. Just these little details that you can extract. So, in saliva, scientists have found hints of a ghost species of archaic humans that may have contributed to genetic material to ancestors of people living in sub-Saharan Africa today. I've talked about DNA evidence of unknown Homo sapiens sapiens, or unknown, not unknown Homo sapiens sapiens. I apologize for that. Unknown humans, Homo sapiens, in the Andaman Islanders. They have found that they have a genetic, about up to 5%, that is neither Neanderthal nor Denisovan. So this one is added to the growing body of evidence suggesting that sexual rendezvous between different archaic human species may not have been unusual. I've covered that before. I'm not going to rehash that. Past studies have concluded that forebears of modern humans living in Asia and Europe interbred with other early hominin species, including Neanderthals, Homo sapiens neanderthalensis, and Homo sapiens denisovans, which is the name that settled. It's settled. Homo sapiens denisovans, people. Even though we only have the genetic mapping and the 3 actual physical bones, physical fossils, samples of Denisovans. The new research is among the most genetic analysis indicating that ancient Africans also had traces with other early hominins. I did not know that. This is also this is new to me, guys. It seems that interbreeding between different early hominin species was not exceptional; it was the norm, says Omer Gokhuman, PhD, assistant professor of biological science at University of Buffalo College of Arts and Sciences. It's a university. Oh, he's a geneticist. He probably knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's talking about. Not probably. Come on, guys. No, come on, Carlos, you dumb cunt. Early research traces the evolution of an important mucin protein called MUC7 that is found in saliva. He said that when we look at the history of the gene that coded with the protein, we see a signature of archaic admixture in modern-day sub-Saharan African populations. So, our ancestor that lived around 750 to 400,000 years ago, most possibly is possibly Homo heidelbergensis, right? He's the one that most likely candidate to have given rise to us. He was a descendant of Homo erectus, direct descendant, and he's intermediate between Homo erectus and us. Now, that archaic Homo sapien, which I will defend, is Homo heidelbergensis. I will defend until data data comes along to disprove me. I will defend. Was absolutely, most certainly, very genetically. The variation in his genetics between areas would have been huge, higher, much more than we see now. I'll give you an analogy. He would have been like the tigers. Archaic Homo sapiens, or in what I defend, Homo neanderthalensis, he would have been like the tiger. You have the Bengal tiger, the Siberian tiger, the Sumatran tiger, etc., etc. They are all tigers, obviously, but they are all genetically and enough difference between them to be almost subspecies. Well, they are no, to be subspecies of each other. But they still can interbreed with each other. And that's wrong analogy. I've just thought about it. Disregard this, please. I'm not going to cut it, but I'm going to retract what I just said. Let me rephrase that. It would the Homo heidelbergensis, or archaic Homo sapiens, the genetic variation between in that species would have been so great that he could compare. That's it. He could compare to the tigers, the subspecies tigers, but he wasn't a subspecies. He was one species. He gave his descendants gave rise to different subspecies. He was Homo sapiens, archaic Homo sapiens, or Homo heidelbergensis, because reasons, or archaeology. It'll be clear soon. I don't know when, but it'll be clear soon. Man, this is the first time I've really sort of tried my best at interpreting archaeological data. I failed in the first part, but I think I succeeded in the second part, where I can, instead of comparing the genetic, compared more or less the variation could be seen as, not as an analogy, but as an example. Yeah, that's correct. Yep. So, the research published on July 21st, so it's very recent, in the journal Molecular Biology and Evolution. Do I have it here? Let me just... yep. There we go. That's the study. So I'm up to date. At least I got that right. God, I think that analogy with the tigers is wrong. It's sort of an example to show you how much variation could exist within a population of one species. But I used different subspecies. Well, different species, because the different the tigers one, I don't know. I could use the dog. The dog is more better. The dog, the domesticated dog, is genetically, he has a lot of variations, but he's still Canis lupus familiaris. He's a subspecies of wolf. But if you can see them, the Chihuahua, and you look at a Great Dane, the genetic variation between the two is huge, enormously. He's enormous, not enormously. God damn it! I need a beer. I need a drink. 1 sec. How am I going, guys? Am I entertaining you, or am I boring you to tears? Sometimes I don't know. I think I'm boring myself. Oh, thank you, Evil mate. Thank you. Thank you, Gunny. So let's continue. Thank you for the encouragement, my brother. Thank you. So the scientists came upon the findings while researching the purpose of the origins of the MUC7 protein. I don't know what it is. I will not even try to. Which helps give spit that slimy consistency and binds to microbes, potentially helping to rid the body of disease-causing bacteria. Well, that's not a pretty picture, but it's good to know that you have a potential, you have a defense mechanism right in your saliva. As part of the investigation, the team examined the MUC7 gene from more than 2,100 modern human genomes. So it's a lot of enough. Well, it's not a lot, but it's a good sample. The analysis yielded a surprise. A group of genomes from sub-Saharan Africa had a version of the gene that was widely different from the versions found in other modern humans. This is again looking at specific markers. I talked about that in the Canaanite news thing. So these are specific markers that we use, that can be used to distinguish. The sub-Saharan variant was so distinctive that Neanderthals and Denisovans MUC7 genes matched closely to those of other modern humans. So Neanderthals and Denisovans were closer to modern humans, European, Eurasians, etc. And then the sub-Saharan outlier did. So the sub-Saharan have a different gene to the rest of the world. So based on that analysis, its most plausible explanation from this extreme variation is the introgression, the introduction of genetic materials from a ghost species of ancient hominins. Or that speculation, or that the Denisovan Neanderthals gave us that MUC7 gene that is also from north of the Saharan common. But that is my interpretation. Let's continue on. And given that the right genes mutate during the course of evolution, the team calculated the ancestor of the people who carried the sub-Saharan MUC, the MUC7 variant, interbred with each other with another ancient human species about 150,000 years ago. So there were two very distinct Homo sapiens in Africa around 150,000 years ago. We know of the Moroccan fossil, and we know of Hadar in Ethiopia, which was till then the oldest Homo sapiens sample that we had. The difference between them 150,000 years, but this was right in the middle. And that these two species evolutionary paths diverged from each other some 1.5 to 2 million years ago. So it was basically during Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalensis, Homo heidelbergensis, or archaic Homo sapiens in Africa. Now, why does this gene matter, the MUC7? Because in previous studies show that the protein likely evolved to serve an important purpose in humans. Yes, you just said that. Used sort of a small mechanism bound to what does it say? Binds to microbes and helps rid the body of disease-causing bacteria. In some people, the gene that codes the MUC7 holds 6 copies of genetic instructions that direct the body to build parts of the corresponding protein. In other people, the gene harbors only 5 sets of these instructions, known as tandem repeats. This is technical for me. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. Prior studies of these researchers found that the 5-copy version of the gene protected against asthma, but Gockman and Rule did not see this association when they ran a more detailed analysis. The new study did conclude, however, that the MUC7 appears to influence the makeup of the oral microbiome, the collection of bacteria within the mouth. The evidence of which came from an analysis of the biological samples of 130 people, which found that different versions of the MUC7 gene were strongly associated with different oral microbial compositions. I mean, this gene generates what the bacteria we have in our the plaque, etc., in our mouth, in our saliva, that helps to break down our food, everything, basically. The MUC7 protein is thought to enhance the ability of saliva to bond with microbes, an important task that may help prevent disease by clearing unwanted bacteria and other pathogens from the mouth. I don't know what the hell the MUC7 it's a gene, it's a protein. It helps, as they say, possibly bind microbes. But in another thing, that it could help protect against asthma. But the Gockman and Rule said it hasn't been associated. It needs more details. And basically, that's The two samples. So it's getting interesting. Our genetic makeup is, well, at least our ancestors. I mean, our descendant. Well, no, our ancestors, the early Homo sapiens, the ones that left Africa, were a mixed bag of genetic materials, and they even then interbred with Homo sapiens neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens denisovans, and and they produced us, which we now dominate the world. And so that sort of ends out the three articles. Oh, before I go, I already showed you guys the article, the actual study. Feel free. It's out there. It's public domain. So you're not. If you download the PDF that I recommended, you're not breaking copyright or whatever. You can do it because it's freely available. And it was an interesting thing. The Australian, just to recap on the three articles, the Canaanites. I'm not surprised that genetically they are still present in that area. Apart from the Ottoman invasion and the Crusades, etc. Well, the Crusades didn't really mix. It was too short, too small of an episode to actually impact on the genetics of the locals. That area has been quite homogeneous for forever. Even the Romans didn't really impact genetically much into that area, because they came later, much later than what and it shows that 7% from Eastern Europe, etc., which Eastern Europe before genetics is really complex, and I'm not a geneticist. I will not hypothesize on any of it. So basically that ends that. So I'm just gonna now see how the chat's going. Hello, Ruben, Levi, my friend. What did you do? You tried doces brancos today, and they were amazing. That's good to hear, man. That's cool. Oh, Madeira sponge, yes. Pão de ló is also good. That's the Portuguese continental sponge. Just sponge it. It has no toppings or anything. I'm going on to food. Are you in Portugal, Carlos? What the hell? Bolo de limão. Yeah, we Portugal has a hell of a lot. About 80 to 90% of our sweets and cakes and shit are all convental. The convents did it because people would pay convents and priests and that. They didn't have money, so what they did, they'd offer eggs and shit. And the nuns and priests and all that, the monks and that, didn't have much to do with the eggs, so they invented. And they invented awesome cakes and sweets and biscuits and that. You should try. It translates to soft eggs. Portuguese ovos moles. They come from Aveiro. They are the wafer, a really thin wafer exterior with an umptious egg and sugar based cream type thing in the middle. You just, oh god, that's awesome. Yeah, we have a good community, Carlos, David. We have an awesome community of Jews still living here, Monforte and Belmonte. Belmonte is not far from me, and I have to go there. They have the most awesome Jewish sausages. They are basically made of garlic and white meat. No pigs. That's how they tricked the Inquisition into saying, these are okay, these are Christians. They have sausages hanging over their larder. So yeah. It's not a it's not a gunny. It's you can eat, but it's a sponge cake. It's not actual sponge, man. No, the sneaky Jews. No, they introduced the alheira, as it's called, because it's got a lot of garlic, white meat, game actually. It has a hare, a rabbit, a chicken, all that type of meat, and lots of their fat. Or you can they even use um, non-pig fat, and it is the fucking vine. I kill for that sausage. Grilled over we grill it over an alcohol flame. We have these special grillers for sausage grilling. That it is awesome, mate. You guys have to come here and eat that. Yes, Gunny, Jared Kushner. Yes, he's awesome. Okay, guys, 1 hour's up. I'm going to end the stream. I really, really love you guys. I hope to see you next week or earlier. If I don't do one in the middle, I'm not going to do the Neanderthal Tuesdays because it's too close to this one. And Tuesdays, we'll see. Uh, we'll see. We'll see. Anyway, guys, thank you for coming on and good night.